right, let's do this. All right, it's loading. Hey, sup, Woody? Can you hear me well? Woo, cool. The waffle was pretty good. I am not too bad. Oh fuck, that's huge. Okay, maybe I overdid it a bit. Oh yeah. Oh wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Cool. So yeah, I think it's not gonna be very long, but I don't know. It's always hard to know, you know. And I'll try to get people to interact with me also, maybe showing like emojis or whatever if they are lost or something. If they have questions in the middle, do you want to let them ask them or not? I don't mind. I don't mind. I don't think it's necessary because it's going to be short enough, so I can go back to the slides after. Cool. So what should I do now? Host tools? No? Yeah, I have it there. Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, I don't think I will. Yeah, I actually I can do it. No, it's fine. I can do it. It's just that I'm gonna put probably the headset on the floor, so it's like in this thing, you know, if I'm just gonna sync. Okay, cool. Mm-hmm. It's gonna be 7, yeah. How do I change the slides again? Is it in browser? Mm-hmm. Lab, yeah. Okay, and slides, right? loading speaker view. Okay. Oh yeah, with A because it's weird. Okay. Fuck, what did I do? Okay, yeah. I think I prefer to be somewhat around the middle, but I'll walk around if needed, of course. But I think I prefer to be here than there. Hide. Yeah, yeah, I'll do my best. If I do, people will complain, or you will complain, I don't know. Somebody will complain. Okay, so this view can sink in the ground, that's annoying. Okay, so here it's good. Alright. Where are you? Oh. Okay, can I remove the menu? Gosh. Oh no, it moves by itself. Okay. Yeah, I cannot remove the alt space menu, right? All the buttons. Fine, okay. Because it's kind of in the middle of my view. Don't know if I can move it. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Cool. Gosh, I'm trembling a little bit. It's the stress of VR. Yeah. So it's getting pretty tough to click. Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty scared because it's hard not to see the public. I mean, not to see their reaction. So this one is not technical, so it's fine. But yeah, last week or this week? Yeah, this week the one with Bitcoin Dev London was really hard because I didn't know if people were lost or not, and it was quite technical. So it's like you speak alone and you kind of don't know if people are still following. So that was a tough one. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Okay. Cool. How do I stop that? Yeah, cool. If I click here, yes, it starts by itself. Cool. The timer is good. How many people do you think we'll have? I didn't see many signups compared to usual, so. Oh, okay. Alright. Cool. That's nice. No, I'm really happy about that. Thank you for having me. I'll try to make it worth it. And, sure, I don't know, but I'll do my best. They are. Yeah. Yeah, because until now we didn't think it was possible without adding new opcodes, which is interesting because it is possible. Well, it's not perfect, but the best we can do. Okay, why do I have fog? Is it fog? Did I touch the lens? Maybe I've touched the lens. But yeah, it's super hot in Lisbon, so hopefully I don't need water, and hopefully it doesn't get all foggy and unusable. Nope. Yeah. But I mean, in Lisbon, the buildings are like super old, and so it's okay inside. Like it's always cold, basically inside. But yeah, when you're like doing things that are like stressful or require movement, with the headset, it becomes a nightmare. Like playing Beat Saber. Oh my god. Yeah. I got the VR cover thing, the fabric you put around so you can wash it. But yeah, it lasts like an hour and then it's soaked, so it's just. Okay. I'm not sure what's best, to be honest. Leather should be like really hot as well, but at least, yeah, it's not, it doesn't suck the sweat. But at least the index is very comfortable. That's like a really good thing. Okay, when you do the tweet, you tell me. And yeah, maybe some people will be in the front row and complain because they have like a neck pain or something. So are you sitting right now? Sup? How are you? You are early, but it's fine. Udi is doing things. Do you want me to retweet, Udi? Are you there? I'm not sure he's here. Hello! Oh, you muted yourself. Okay. Do you need me to retweet or? Okay. Oh, that's Jimson. Okay, cool. And MZ, so MZ, you already know a lot about volts, so. This is going to be different than the last time. A little bit. You can probably go like in the ceiling and you will still be able to read. Hello! Oh, somebody else. Hello! Gosh, people are early. This is cool. What's up? Hello. Hello, hello. Yep. Oh, we will have it here at the end. Woody tried to. Yeah, I'm gonna do a pretty short presentation, and afterwards we'll have the space launch thing. Hopefully, yeah. Hopefully it launches and hopefully it will work. Hi everyone, a lot of people coming. I don't know. Yep. Okay, cool. He's gone. I know he's there with the white beard. Yeah, in the front row. Yeah. All right. Let me tweet that. Yeah, sorry, I had to do something. I don't know, somebody's bugging hard. I think it's the guy in red with the hat. Yeah, box, yeah, I think. Yep, cool. Yep, yep. Okay, should I put the amplify thing?
Yes.
Alright, so that should be it. Cool. Alright, so let's try this. I'm gonna stand probably around here in the middle. I'll try to move around if I need to for visibility. Oula, something happened. What is wrong with this? Okay. Alright. Hey. I'm gonna put this on Windows Fold. It's not. Alright, so I need to open the thing again. Sorry about that. Alright, I'm good. Okay. Yeah, so I don't know what happened. I completely froze, so hopefully it doesn't do it again. First time. Alright, so what was I saying? Yes, hi, my name is Kevin Loaek. You can find me on Twitter at KLOAEC. I'm going to talk about Revault, which is a multi-party vault architecture. So of course I'm going to explain what a vault is as well, because this one is one of the first ones. Also, what can I say? Hi mom, because I know she's watching on the live stream. And yeah, I think that's about it. Also, yeah, I'm really excited to do this meetup because it's the first time I'm doing it in VR. Also, it's going to be the first time that I have to kind of figure out if the crowd understands what I'm talking about or not. So please use emojis when you don't understand something or whatever. You can put the sad face so I can re-explain or things like that. It's going to be pretty short as a presentation because after that we have the SpaceX launch, and yeah, so for the questions it's probably better if you wait until the end of the event. So yeah, unless there is a very pressing question, but otherwise it should be fast enough so we can cover everything in the end. Alright, so today, first thing, security in Bitcoin is pretty much dealt by key management. So we have two important things to cover. There is who controls the keys and how are the keys kept. By keys I mean private keys, obviously. So who controls the keys? That is simply, do you have your own private keys? Do you safekeep them yourself? Or are you dealing with a third party like an exchange or businesses that do it for you? So that's about the control. And now how are the keys kept? This is impacting everybody. So even if you are leaving your funds at an exchange or online wallet, they still have to deal with the keys themselves. So typically you have different levels of keys. You might have heard of cold storage. So cold storage would be like the ultimate never touched a computer key. So that's the key you would use only to put like your long-term savings, and every time you need to access it, then you're supposed to replace the keys, because when you use it, then they might have touched a compromised computer or something like that. But what most of us use today is a hardware wallet. I guess most of you have one, I suppose, and you should if you don't have one. The hardware wallet is kind of emulating this thing of being offline, or at least to not be compromisable with a malware on your computer or things like this, while you still retain usability. So you can still use your coins without being scared every time that your private key might have leaked. And then, of course, there is the last one, which is having your keys on a computer or device that is connected to the internet. So typically, the wallet you have on your phone, it's not very secure. So don't put all your Bitcoin on your phone. That is not a smart idea. I'm going to mention quickly as well that there are different types of ways to interact with keys. So it could be a multi-sig setup, for example. So multi-sig means that you need multiple keys to unlock the coins, to move them. That could mean different people, or different services, or even different devices. So you could be self-hosting your coins, being in control of them, but still requiring keys that are on different devices. So there are businesses that also helps you with that, like Casa, like Blockstream Green, and also some of them create new risk or different ways of trust models. All right, so UTXOs in Bitcoin. So Bitcoin doesn't do accounts. We are not like Ethereum or whatever. There is no account in Bitcoin. In Bitcoin, you have UTXOs. UTXOs are basically the coins that you receive. Every time you receive a transaction, this amount that you receive is like a different coin in your wallet. It's a different UTXO. So UTXOs are where we put the locking conditions on who can then move these coins. So basically what we can do today is choosing who can spend the coins. So basically if somebody sends you money, it just means that you are the one that can move the funds now. And also something we can do, but pretty much we never do, is to put a lock time on it. A lock time is a condition from when you will be able to move these funds. So for example, you could say, like, I don't know, 1st of December, before that nobody can move these funds. And after that, of course, only you can move them. So this is already pretty cool, but this is also very limited. So this is not, vaults yet. We're just talking about normal UTXOs, and as you can see, there is not much restriction we can do. In short, we cannot do where, meaning you cannot send funds Bitcoin to somebody while also restricting where the funds can go afterwards. So you cannot, I cannot send you money and then tell this transaction that the funds that you will be able to spend can only go into a waitlist of addresses, for example, your Kraken account. So of course you could send it to yourself if that was possible, and then restrict it to Kraken only. which is pretty cool because then a thief with your private key wouldn't be able to send it anywhere else than Kraken. And that is super interesting, but that is not possible today on Bitcoin. Another thing we cannot do is to restrict how much of these funds you can spend afterwards. So we cannot put a restriction, for example, on you will be able to spend only $1,000 worth of Bitcoin every week, which would also be really interesting to deter theft, because then a thief wouldn't be able to steal all your money, even if your keys leak, so you would have time to defend yourself or things like that. So in short, oh yeah, that's pretty basic for now. So I know some of you are like super experts on Bitcoin in the room. I'm trying to make this quite simple because the crowd is pretty varied. We have long-term Bitcoiners and we have new ones as well. And also, I suppose the YouTube stream needs to be more accessible than the usual technical presentation. It will get more technical at the last slide. And also for the questions, if you have very technical questions, don't hesitate in the end. So what we have, I guess I'm not blocking the view too much. So yeah, in short, what I just said is that transaction looks like this. You have inputs and outputs. So this is a transaction, and there you have another one. So what you can do with Bitcoin is that with the output of the first transaction, you restrict the inputs of the next one. So you can say who can spend it, if it's a single person, a multisig, or if there is time lock. That's pretty much what you can do today. What you cannot do is to restrict where this money can go afterwards, so the outputs. And that is the problem we're trying to solve when we talk about vaults. So vaults is trying to get over this separation of hot and cold wallet as like how we deal with security, because it's still too limited. Hot and cold wallet works against like an online threat, but that's pretty much it. If somebody comes and threatens your family or threatens you even, probably no matter if it's a cold storage or whatever, you might end up giving it away. And we're trying to put restrictions nearly at the blockchain level, or at least as close to the protocol as possible, that the funds cannot go to the thief. And why that? Because the point of vaults is not just to be secure by design, it's going further than that. It's making it so hard for a thief, for a theft to happen, that it makes no sense to start a theft in the first place. And that's why a lot of people have been talking about Vault since governance since 2013. There have been some proposals since 2015, 2016 on how we might be able to implement them. But the problem is, until now, we thought it was impossible with the Bitcoin we have today. So today, Bitcoin looks like that. We have a pretty restricted set of what we can do. We have different opcodes, but they are limited. They are supposed to let you move money around. That's it. We don't have a highly programmable blockchain thingy. We have just a set of things that are secure, and we know they are secure. We're trying to keep them working. And with that, then it's up to you to be smart on how you can try to build what you want to build. And although these blocks are really basic, we start seeing a lot of super interesting use cases on top of Bitcoin, like Lightning networks, for example. So if you were just thinking that, at the beginning of Bitcoin, if people would think that something like a second layer network of channels was possible without adding new opcodes, that's pretty amazing. And we can do other things. So with these blocks, we're trying to do something that works. Maybe it doesn't look like the perfect thing, but at least it works. What we cannot do is to ask the core devs to change Bitcoin just for us because we have a cool use case. And vaults are like that. They are not on the market. You've never used a vault in this definition because there is none on Bitcoin today. It's just we thought it was impossible without changing Bitcoin core, so there have been a lot of proposals. But yeah, if you need to wait for a soft fork or a hard fork to happen, it might never happen. So the big problem around Vault was that it was practicality. Can we actually do vaults today? And yes, we can. So vaults are trying to go further than just the online threat model, because as I explained earlier, the online threat, somebody accessing your private key, is pretty much covered by using hardware wallets or even cold storage if you really don't trust hardware or things like that. We want to add more things like the physical threat, so somebody coming to your house and threatening you. We also want to add other models like the internal threats that could be happening in a business situation. I will cover this in details later, yeah. Yeah, I think that's fine for this slide. So back to this, Lego slide thing. Today we have just a few things we can use. We have like multisig, that is interesting for security because you can add different parties. These parties could be automated, they don't have to be a human being. So that's what businesses like BitGo are doing, where you put your conditions with the business. But in the end of the day, it's just a key. There is no enforcing on the blockchain at this level. It's just you trust the business to respect the conditions you give them. We also have time locks. So time locks are pretty cool because they can enforce a delay and nobody can breach that. So if you wanted to keep your Bitcoin for, I don't know, at least a year before you can spend them, you could today. You can do that, and that is enforced on the blockchain. Great. But what we don't have, again, is what we call covenants. That's the restriction on the outputs. So yeah, until now, if somebody threatens you physically, if they get your keys, probably it's not going to save anything. If we could restrict where the funds can go, even with the keys, they can't steal it, which would be pretty cool. And why am I talking about institutions? So there are different types of vaults that have been designed, or at least on paper. The ones I'm talking about here, Revault, is targeting institutions. Why? Because they are the ones with the, I'm gonna move a bit. They are the ones with the biggest threats, because there is that very high incentive. The funds are usually centralized, they're not kept by like different keys for each user. Instead, it's usually one big wallet with a lot of funds. So that could be, exchanges, that could be hedge funds, or any business holding Bitcoins. So the incentive for an attack is really high. And with the defense we have today on Bitcoin, as I said, just keys basically, usually it's not that hard to, threaten 2-3 people and get access to hundreds of millions of funds. So we've been pretty lucky so far that there is not many physical attacks on Bitcoin businesses and big holders. There have been some, but yeah, we need to go further than just this level of security, otherwise people are going to live in fear, and that's not cool. Operations are also super interesting. So operation means that security is great, but if it's hard to use, nobody's going to use it. That's one of the major points in security design, is that if you develop something that would be annoying as hell, nobody's going to use it. It's not going to happen. It's not about being perfect if it's unusable. So typically in businesses you have, I don't know, the CFO who would be able to spend the money, and that's fine because that's his role. But that means only one signature. So can he go away with all the money? That's an internal threat. Today, most of the times, yeah, unless there is multisig. But then this multisig, how many people are you going to put on it? 3 people need to approve every single transaction? That's pretty insane. And 3 people is not that much in terms of risk mitigation. So yeah, having covenants or having restriction on the output would be really helpful in that case. And this is what Revault look like. Can you see everything? Yeah. So I'm going to go through that. It is pretty technical, so I'm going to try to simplify it as much as I can. And then if you have technical questions, I will let you ask them. I think I can get a laser pointer here. Yeah. All right. So the first step is the deposit. So the deposit is basically a transaction that you didn't do. It's, let's say you are a hedge fund and you are withdrawing money from Kraken. It is now in your possession. What we want to do is that this deposit, so the address you're giving to Kraken, for example, is a pretty big multisig. In that case, n out of n. N in this is not a small number. It's usually pretty high, and that's what we would call the stakeholders in our architecture. And the stakeholders are pretty much anybody that are concerned by the money. But they do not want to be taking part of the decision on where the money is going and things like that. It's just, for us, it's just a security thing. So these addresses, no, this address, sorry. So these n participants maybe once a day, are going to then be prompted with like all the deposit they received the day before, and they have to go through a process of pre-signing transactions, and they have to pre-sign 4 of them. So in this slide you have 2. You have this one that we call the unvaulting transaction, which is going to be a pre-signed transaction, and you have this one, which is the cancel transaction, and that's where the name Revault comes from, because when you cancel a transaction, it goes again to a vault, so to an n out of n big number multisig. All right. So now, why are they pre-signed? Okay, different things. The unvaulting transaction, so the one that we let people spend from the secure vault here, has 2 different types of condition. You can use them to spend. Either you are part of the M of n, so M would be the pre-approved spenders, so typically could be 1, could be your CFO, it could be 2 or 3 traders if you are a hedge fund. So this is a smaller number, that's the normal number of people that can use the funds in a normal business situation. So that's where the operation come from. And also then they would have to have a delay, a time lock on the transaction using this. So for these guys, for the guys spending the money, all they see is a normal Bitcoin wallet. They have a wallet with outputs they know they can spend from, and they just decide, these funds can go then to whoever. And so they are just signing a transaction like you would do a normal Bitcoin transaction. The difference is that there will be a delay that they have to enforce before this transaction is mined. And during this delay, one other pre-signed transaction that's also using the n of n because the signatures are going to be signed from there. So any of the stakeholders, so of all the n people, can trigger a revaulting transaction if they see anything dodgy. But because these are pre-signed transactions, the private keys are not stored with them. You only store the pre-signed transaction. So you can use a service that is not a human being that is going to check if the conditions are fine, or that could just trigger, could be sending you a text message if there is a weird condition happening. You can think of a lot of ways of triggering that. But what we typically have is watchtowers. So you would have watchtowers that, for example, you could say, if it's not during business hours, automatically trigger this. So if we see a spending transaction that is being spent outside of the normal business hours, no, it should not go through. We are going to send a cancel transaction, and boom, it's secure again behind the set of n participants. So you would need to wait for everybody to see this new deposit before being able to spend it. What that also means is that when these guys, the normal authorized spenders, are trying to spend a transaction, they only see the funds that have already been pre-signed by everybody. So you cannot think of a risk like, I'm triggering a deposit from Kraken right now, and as an authorized spender, I'm gonna try to spend them straight away and steal the money. That cannot happen. You need to have everybody acknowledging the deposit because they need to go through the pre-signing process. What else can I say about this? Yes, so this is not complete. I simplified it. This is not secure as it is, but you have the concept. I can go deeper after in the questions if you have anything around this. And also now, I'm going to put that here. And also now there is another thing which we have into this architecture that you might have seen if you've seen another presentation of Revault, is that we're adding 2 other transactions. I've put only 1 box here because otherwise it was too many boxes. But you have 2 different emergency transactions that are spending to a different type of address. So it's not an n out of n. It's something outside of our Vault architecture that is strictly harder to spend than the n out of n. The reason for that, so that could be, for example, n out of n plus a 2 months delay where the funds are stuck. And also these new keys should be stored in different location and very hard to access. This is never supposed to be broadcast to the blockchain. It's like emergency, if something really bad is happening. Why do we have that? Because we can then bypass the whole architecture at any stage, basically, even if it's not been even if it's not been pushed as a spending transaction yet. If it's just been pre-signed from the deposit, you can already move all the funds away in an even more secure location in case something bad happens. That helps prevent an attack on the entire n participants from happening. So even if you break this n thing, as long as there is a watchtower or something that can trigger an emergency, your funds are going to be secure. This is a very, very big deterrent against physical threat. Also, something you might notice if you are into Bitcoin and into security is that the risk, or at least the type of attack that this is built to sustain is n-1. So that means that you can corrupt every single one of the participants except one, and this is still secure, because the other one is not going to accept signing from the deposit. So it's not going to accept signing the unvaulting that's going to be necessary to spend. Another thing that this person can do, or his watchtowers, would be to broadcast consenting transaction if anything bad happens. The problem that it creates, because there is nothing free in Bitcoin, is that a single participant can also lock the funds by refusing to sign. So that's something our model here doesn't cover, because it cannot. It's either you are secure against theft up to n-1, or you or you don't have this resilience against the one being able to lock the funds. Why that? Because if the one is, the protocol has no way to know if the one is actually the one being corrupt or not. So we took the choice of letting the funds be locked, not burned, locked, until they resolve it by legal manner or whatever. It's supposed to be for a company. We prefer the funds to be locked than being stolen. So the approach we took was that in any case there shouldn't be any theft possible. We prefer to have the funds locked for a long time. And yeah, there is a last thing that is the biggest risk we have so far, so we still are working on this, is that a single person could go completely mad and delete all of his keys and backups. And in that case, that means that all new deposits to these n out of n addresses would be locked forever. So that would be burned. But it's still okay, because you could, you would notice that one day somebody didn't sign, so the amount of funds being locked should be reasonable. But this is an attack that could happen, burning all keys plus backups on purpose. And I think that's pretty much it for now. So last thing, just to help you with understanding everything. The first step is that when deposit is received, so any funds are received, they are already secure behind n out of n. That is much bigger than the typical multisig that a business would have, because this doesn't impact operations. It's every day they go through a nearly automated process, not completely, they still have to press a few buttons, but a very simple process to approve the new deposits. But this is not the normal n of n that a business would be using for spending funds. After that, these funds are approved. So when all the stakeholders have seen the new deposit, all the funds are pretty much approved by default. So the M stakeholders, the authorized spenders, can create a transaction to spend from it. And after that, there is a delay where the defense mechanism can be activated. So the canceling transaction that would go back to a vault. All right? So another thing I wanted to add is that the defense mechanism, if it's triggered by mistake, if it's the canceling transaction or the cancel transaction being triggered by mistake, it's not a problem. It doesn't add new time blocks. So all it brings is back to n out of n that could be signed in the same block if really you wanted, and that could be unvaulted in the same block again. So it's not really a problem if a cancel transaction is triggered. Yeah, I think that's about it. I don't know if you have any questions or if something wasn't clear. Yeah. I tried to make it quite short and I hope it's fine. Very, very good question. Yes, okay, perfect. Something I forgot to cover. Today, there is no Vault implementation. Zero. It doesn't exist. You have two architectures that were released in the past 2 months that are practical today, so that could be used today without modifying Bitcoin. So that's the first time ever that we have architectures published that way. One of them is from us, so Revault, and the other one is from a Fidelity investment, Fidelity Labs, who sponsored a group of work of Brian Bishop, Bob McElrath, Spencer Rommel, and Jacob Swambo, who wrote a paper on how to do a practical vault, a little bit like this, but they used something different called secure key deletion. So their architecture would require that you can delete private keys in a secure way, and you know that it's deleted, and then you have to store all the pre-signed transactions, because if you lose them, the funds are lost. So it's a very different way of implementing something similar. And now the implementation that we have is only a demo right now. It's written in Python. You can find it on GitHub /revolt/revolt-demo, which is a functional demo, but you should not put funds behind it. For the other one, I don't know if it's finished yet, but I think they will publish it very soon. They also have a demo in Python. It requires a little bit more. It requires HSMs and things like this. But yeah, so for now, the state of the art is demos. For Revolt, we are currently trying to make it a business, which probably the other one is not going to become. As far as I know, the other one was just like an academic paper to see how it could be done, not really with the willingness of building it in production. For Revolt, we're really trying to build it to production, so probably you will see a full implementation in like 1 year of time. It needs to be built up properly from the ground up, being reviewed, being audited. It's a lot of things we need to do, but probably in like a year of time, you will have it working, like implemented properly. Yes, it could be. So the n, I'm gonna take the pointer again. So you are asking about the n here, is it the same as the n here? Okay, no, it doesn't have to be. To simplify, here it is, but actually the demo we have has a different subset of people. So the n, the real n of n, is like a set of stakeholders. It's supposed to be a big number. But then you could have different conditions. You could have a subgroup of traders, maybe traders in the funds, and maybe that would be 2 out of the 3 traders that needs to sign. So even if one of them is sick or whatever, you still have 2 others that can do transaction. So they don't have to be related. It's just, it's kind of optimum if you have the same n in terms of size of the transaction, but it, you know, it doesn't change much in terms of cost. Yeah. Emergency Deep Vault. It's a super cool name we have for like the coldest cold storage ever, buried in different countries by different people with like very long lock time. Something you pretty much, you know, don't want to have to spend from. All right, so the colors I used was about where it's used as like an input. Anyways, the m of n plus delay is what you need to spend normally. So let's say 1 signature plus a delay is enough to spend. Now, this n of n here only acts as a very secure way of bypassing the delay. So going here to the spending, you have a delay that you have to wait. But if you use the n of n, you don't have the delay here. So during the meantime, during the time where this pending transaction has been seen, you have time to send either an emergency or a cancel transaction. So we need the security of this pre-signed transaction to be at least as big as the one from the deposit. So we are using exactly the same because it makes sense. Yes, yes. So the N is for signatures. Yeah, so these are signatures, right? But they are the signatures that are going to be used to sign these transactions. But once they are signed, you don't broadcast them until you need to. So once they are signed, you just need, Watchtower or whatever to push it to the network. The Watchtower doesn't have any private key, none, zero. Yep. Yeah, you have different ways of doing it. The simple way, which is the one in the demo, requires a server just to craft the transaction that then is going to be sent to the signers. But actually, there is an attack possible against this type of implementation around fees. You don't want the pre-signed transaction to be stuck in the mempool if there is a spike. You really need these pre-signed transactions to go through before the delay expires. And also, if we did a RBF or something, because it's n, it's a very big number, we would need all the n participants to sign again. So then we have the same type of attacks that are possible on Lightning with transaction pinning and things like this. The way we are doing it is that we do SIGASH single anyone can pay for all the signatures except the one of the part the stakeholder signing. So of course all of them do it, but all of them actually have a different pre-signed transaction because they do a SIGASH hold, anyone can pay, just to make sure there is no malleability and things like that around it. What else did you say? Yes, so it doesn't really need to be crafted by a third-party server because all you broadcast is different transactions to each other, and the only the only signatures you send to each other are SIGASH single anyone can pay. What else do I have to say? Yes, PSBT. No, because PSBT doesn't handle OpCSV, and so we have a problem with that. So we would need OpCSV in PSBT, and OpCSV is actually the big problem for everything in Bitcoin right now, because it's been supported in Bitcoin for a long time, but you cannot even do it with Bitcoin Core. I mean, it's insane. OpCSV has no support. Only Lightning wallets use it. So that's also valid for. Oh no, I think it works for Miniscript. But for Miniscript, we have other problems with this because in the different conditions of the script, we use the same participants sometimes, like the n here or whatever. And Miniscript doesn't handle factorization of public keys. So it would create a script that reuses the same public key multiple times, which is suboptimal in terms of fees. So even the transaction for this implementation, we have to build them by hand. But yeah, we've reached probably the smaller size possible, but we have to do it by hand. Did we lose Oli? Yep. Yeah. Yep. Great questions. All right. So as soon as somebody, so this is not cold storage as such. It's for businesses that need to move funds from time to time, right? That could be the cold storage for an exchange that needs to move still funds from time to time. As soon as they do one transaction like that, it's pretty obvious that this is Revault. There is nothing else using this kind of scheme, as far as I know. I mean, you could think of some, yeah. But it would be pretty obvious that it's behind a Revault type thing, and also you would see that there is n of n that is pretty big and might just scare you before everything else. So now let's go for the most hardcore attack that you could do against it, because I think it's easier to start this way. Let's say the n of n here is like 5 out of 5 people. It's a pretty small hedge fund. It's all the partners, right? If you only attack 4 of them, you have one that will be able to trigger either a cancel transaction if you're trying to spend, or an emergency if you suspect that anything dodgy is happening. So this is already pretty big deterrent. Now, if you manage to have all of them attacked at the same time, meaning in the same 10 minutes, in the same block, so they don't have time to figure out that something dodgy is happening, you still have the risk that any one of them is going to push somehow, an emergency transaction. In that case, all of the funds, so one emergency transaction cascades and sends all of the other ones. So if you send one, all of the funds are sent to an address, EDV here, that has never been used before, so you don't know what kind of security is behind it. The only thing you know is that it's harder to spend from than n out of n. So out of these 4 people, maybe you can't even spend it. Even if you already targeted these 4 people and you keep threatening them, you completely abducted them, typically the EDV would have like a multiple months long time lock with at least the same number of people, maybe even more. So there is absolutely no guarantee that you'll be even capable of spending from the EDV, even if you take these people for a few months with you. What else? Yes, in terms of watchtowers, so most of the processes should be, because that's part of security as well, most of the processes should be backed up by automated processes. So watchtowers, the great thing about them is that you go from the security assumption that adding a watchtower should never add a new risk. It should only lower the risk. That's why watchtowers don't have private keys, for example. They cannot steal your funds. Watchtowers can only trigger something that puts the funds back in a safe vault. So any business should have multiple watchtowers. They should have watchtowers that they self-host themselves. They should also pay businesses to be watchtowers for them. And you don't know how many they're using. So how would you know how many of these servers you would need to DDoS to make sure absolutely no one can spend just a cancel transaction, for example? Yeah, so there is that. And now we have another attack we're working on, which is a nation-state level attack where you would attack all of the participants at the exact same time, but you also make sure that they have absolutely no way of signaling an emergency transaction themselves. So you absolutely cut power, internet. You make sure that there is absolutely no radio wave coming out, no satellite signal, anything, just so they have no way of signaling that they are being threatened. Now we are looking at that because that might be an attack. So there are different ways of mitigating against that. But yeah, they are a little bit harder. So we have to keep digging on this. And we want to solve that in a way that doesn't trigger an emergency transaction at the wrong time either. Because triggering an emergency transaction really puts your business out of business for like a few months, and it's a really annoying process. So we need to make sure that the emergency is still there to be enough of a deterrent without being a false positive. because that would be really, really hard for the business. So we're trying to figure that out. We can't really give the emergency to a watchtower, a normal watchtower, because then it really adds risk. If somebody leaks this emergency transaction, they can lock your funds for like 2 months. So it's annoying. Don't know if that answers the question.
Great. Okay, next up is Alex.
Cool. Okay. What was the first question again? Sorry. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. One is enough to break the thing, but they need to delete their keys and all of their backups, right? So the boat accident is not enough unless the backups were in the boat and everything else was in the boat. Why is it a problem? Because we need these keys, all of them. We need them to unlock from the deposits. So as soon as you receive money to one of these addresses, you need all of the keys to pre-sign the rest. So if any single one of the N here doesn't exist anymore, then all the new deposits are going to be lost. It doesn't impact the previous ones, because the previous ones have already been pre-signed. So you have the pre-signed transaction, so you don't have a problem. And all the participants have all the pre-signed transaction of everybody. So even if someone goes rogue, you can still move their funds through the normal process. So that's okay. Also, yes, for the secure key deletion, so we don't do that, but the other implementers are working on it. Basically what you need, for example here, this pre-signed transaction, if you wanted to make it absolutely no way to replace it, so here we have a way. If all the participants agree to bypass the architecture, they can. So for example, if you want to move funds from a deposit address elsewhere, with all the signatures you can bypass it. You need everybody to agree, but that's possible. If you were using secure key deletion, you would pre-sign the transaction, and as soon as you have done that, you delete your key, you own, right? Because you trust yourself, but you cannot trust the others. If you delete your key, that's enough to prove that the N doesn't exist anymore, because one less is not working. So even if you prove it to yourself that your key is deleted, then it's enough. Now we have the problem on, can we really delete something from hardware, right? You're not gonna shoot at your hardware every time you sign a transaction. That'd be quite expensive. So can we have some kind of HSM? Can we have some kind of proper hardware wallet that would make sure that the key is deleted every time it signs a pre-signed transaction without creating the risk of signing a broken transaction, so locking the funds and then deleting the private key where your funds would be lost forever. So this is the main issue they are facing. Yes. Yep. So a watchtower is a service that would broadcast a transaction in case something happened. So typically, it's a service to who you give a transaction that you already signed. So you don't give them any private keys; they cannot change it. So you give them a transaction that you signed, but you haven't pushed to the blockchain. Let's say a transaction that moves your money and send it to, I don't know, your mom, right? And you then pay the watchtower and you tell them, hey, never broadcast this transaction unless, I don't know, whatever, right? Unless it's her birthday. So you don't have to think about it because now you trust the watchtower to actually do their job and push the transaction. They cannot steal the money, so that's fine. Using only one watchtower, you cannot trust them to do it. But now, if you use multiple ones, you can somewhat trust that one of them will push the transaction. And they get paid for that, so that's pretty cool. Today, it's really been researched for using in Lightning networks. So Lightning networks lock some funds on the blockchain, on the Bitcoin blockchain, and then you transfer funds between people, but these transactions are not broadcast to the Bitcoin blockchain until we need to close the channel. So typically you have cooperative close, where the two people agree to close it, so there is no problem, but you also have to have a design where one single person could close the channel. Maybe the other one disappeared or stopped responding and they still need their funds, right? So in that case, the watchtowers are just checking on behalf of the other users that the guy is not cheating, trying to steal some money. So if he's not broadcasting the latest state of Lightning, the latest state of the accounts, then he's going to get punished by the watchtower. So yeah, watchtowers are really useful. They let you actively defend on systems like this or Lightning, even when you are sleeping, even when you are going on holidays or whatever. Cool. It was great. Much better than doing a Zoom call or whatever. It's really cool to be able to see the people asking questions and yeah, much better. And also I like walking around, so I'm not sitting right now, I'm standing, and it feels much better than being in front of a Zoom call or whatever, where people are actually watching what you're doing. You're watching me, but it's not me. Yeah, I actually I recorded, well, if it works, I recorded this. So I recorded myself doing this talk, from the outside. So maybe we can do something with it if it works. Hello. Hey. How are you? Yep. 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 PSBT is a specific format. I'm not just talking about partial transaction, right? Okay. Alright. So maybe I'm wrong then. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just something we try to use now. I don't know. Yeah. As far as I know, you can't. Maybe I'm wrong, but yeah, okay. So yeah, I'll do it as well. Cool. Thanks. I'm fine. Oh, Felix, how are you? Thanks. hope it was fine. Oh, we can go in the back. We can go behind the stage. It's gonna be quieter. It's a little bit better. Oh yeah, no, maybe it didn't. Oh. Okay, too bad. Don't know if it's less loud or not. Oh yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff here. Yeah, yeah. Oh wow, yeah, they are cars. Shit. It's Bitcoin orange, it's fine. Yo, Woody, it's not quieter in the back, by the way. Oh shit, I fell. Sit. Salut. Ta-da. Je vais derrière au fond. Yeah. Cool. Okay, yeah, I'm French, yeah. Oh yeah. Um, I am actually not living in France, but yeah, the French community is pretty big. Um, but I moved to Portugal a while back, so yeah, we're trying to build it properly, yeah, because there is a big crypto community now. I'm a Bitcoiner, so I'm trying to build a Bitcoin community. But yeah. Yeah, there is no capital gain on Bitcoin, so that's basically the main the main thing. Amazing weather, you don't pay tax on your Bitcoin gains, and yeah, that's it. Cool. Where are the walls? Okay. Hello.